Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about Genesis. So, few reviews again. There are a few things that I really like to impress. One, this is a serious book written by a serious author, even though we don't have 100% certainty about who it may have been, or authors, or maybe editors, maybe there's different ways to think about it. Whoever they weren't just sort of copying and pasting and just kind of stapling things together that they thought were cool. Whoever put this text together was very, very thoughtful as a human being. In addition to the fact that he is inspired by God, we should take him seriously as an author. And what that means is we should not be sort of prejudiced against this text just because it's old. And those of you who are have any kind of interest in ancient literature of any kind, will understand. Who's into ancient lit? I kind of want to see who's a reader here. Are you guys readers? Anybody know how to read? Raise your hand if you know how to read. One person know how to. Raise your hand if you know how to read. I'm not joking. Raise your hand if you ever read for fun. Keep your hand up if that includes things that aren't websites. Okay, so actual books. Okay, good. I have some actual readers. Good. What do you guys read for fun? I want to know. Who wants to volunteer? What are you reading for fun right now? Unless it's like 50 Shades of Grey. Don't tell me that. Yeah.
Spiritual book.
Like what? What are you reading?
Searching for and maintaining peace.
Okay, never heard of that.
Lies of the Sin.
Okay, that's good. What else do you read for fun? Even if it's weird or something, I'm kind of curious. What are you
Fantasy, like Lord of the Rings.
You're into Lord of the Rings?
Stuff like that. You know,
I've taught a class on Lord of the Rings. That's how much I like that book. It's a really, really beautiful book. It's really well done. And there's a lot to talk about. It's very deep. There's a lot of philosophy in that book. What else? What else do you guys read?
Business intelligence.
Business intelligence.
Yes.
That seems like a contradiction to me.
Well, it talks about ways to be successful,
Okay.
ways to make money. And,
Steal?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not steal.
Steal, but not get caught.
No, stealing is a sin. So.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Oh, I agree that it's a sin. I'm not sure if people that wrote the books agree with that. But yeah. Okay. What else? I want to see it. Is anybody into like? Okay, so one guy likes some Lord of the Rings. What do you read? Yeah.
I just finished The Book Thief.
The Book Thief. I've heard of that.
It's about like the time of Nazi Germany.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Anybody into like ancient things? Anybody read Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey?
A long time ago.
Remember reading it in high school?
Yeah.
When you guys read books like that, don't be dismissive of them. Don't read when you read ancient books. And I almost want to recommend that to you. These old books have been read for thousands of years for a reason, because they're amazing books. So if we're going to count the scriptures even from just a human level, apart from the stuff that we believe by faith, even from a human level, this is a serious, interesting book. Okay, I hope you guys have found that over the last couple of weeks. So that's the big reminder that I wanted to give you today. So I think today we're going to make a big transition from chapter 1, and we're going to go all the way till the second verse of chapter 2. Okay? That's going to be our big progress today. We're going to go all the way until Genesis 2, chapter 2. So let's go back a little bit. Go to Genesis 1:31. And it says, God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, a sixth day. Then chapter 2 starts. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all his work which he had done in creation. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to connect it to some other things that we've talked about over the last month, and some things that we're going to start seeing next week. So, but that's going to be sort of the big topic here. So it says, God saw everything that he had made. So I'm going to write something on the board. I'm going to write these weird squiggly Hebrew letters. And so I wrote this on the board at some point. Okay, this is bara. This is to create. Okay, and then something else happens that's interesting. How do you spell it? Asa, which is, sorry, I didn't translate it. This is to make. So, in many verses, it says that God created. For example, in verse 1, okay, it uses this word to create. In the entire, not just the Bible, but in all literature written in Hebrew, in this language, this verb is only said of God. Only God creates, is the subject of this verb. Okay. This verb, to make, other things can also be the subject of this verb. The only other creature that makes in Genesis chapter 1, who can guess? If there was one other creature that can also make in addition to God, who do you think it would be?
Man.
That's the obvious guess, right? It's wrong. The only creature that is the subject of this verb in this first chapter is a tree. He tells trees to bring forth fruit. And it uses this verb, which is also a verb that's used of God when he makes in this verse here. So I want to reflect on that because we're getting into the sort of linguistic mindset of the author here. And it's giving us a kind of, a sort of broad correspondence that this can give us some kind of a picture of what this might mean. This by itself, creating, bringing something out of nothing, I think the first week I asked you guys to try to imagine that, and it's really beyond our imagination. But when the author is telling us that, well, God does this sometimes too, and by this I mean whatever a tree does to produce fruit. And if there's a kind of metaphor there, let's think about that. Maybe it's worth thinking about. So this is what some of the commentators that I was looking at are pointing out here. It's different. So to make in this sense is different than to construct. Okay. So you're actually, I'm gonna write to bring forth. And I'm going to put in parentheses like a tree bears fruit. That's the kind of analogy here. So in a sense that there's a kind of difference between making and bringing forth. This is the real thing that's happening. When you make, so let's imagine what making is. When you make, when was the last time somebody made something? Wisama makes those shirts, right? You guys know that he does that? So he gets the shirts, he has this pre-existing material that's external to him, he goes and gets them, and then he gets the paint, and then he applies one to the other. He rearranges the materials in a way where he has something new that wasn't there before. Okay? This picture of Padre Pio, for example, on his shirt, right? You made that, right? Yeah. So that's a little bit different than what a tree does. Because in all these cases, in the case of Wisama making that shirt, or of me making these shapes on the board, everything is outside of me. And I'm just moving stuff around that's outside of me. That's not the way a tree makes fruit. A tree brings forth fruit from sort of within itself. Right? You guys, you know, the nuns have nice fruit trees next door. I go and steal some stuff by those sometimes. So the trees that are there in the back, I remember there's plum trees. What are they called? Those red plums? Behind the old folks' home.
Tamur?
No, not Tamur. Anjasa, Vasila Smoka. Mirishame. Yeah, in Azora, Mirishame. They have a special name and I forgot what it was. Anyway, they're really good. They're like sour. So the tree that brings that, it's from within itself. It takes the nutrients for sure from the earth and from the sun, but it's kind of itself, kind of from its own heart, bringing something out. That's the author is saying that God's creation is more similar to that than it is to somebody sort of putting stuff together and kind of making stuff out of it. So far, so good? So that's one interesting similarity. However, it's also different than reproduction. There's an important difference here. Why is bringing forth fruit specifically different than reproduction? Even though fruit is an instrument of reproduction, let's put that aside for now. Why is it different? Because when you reproduce, who has kids? Raise your hand if you have kids. Just David in the back. Okay. So when David had his kids, what's your daughter's name? Scarlet. Scarlet is the same kind of being that he is. It is the same species. You are making the same kind of thing that you are. Does that make sense? Now I'm saying something that seems kind of dumb, right? But that's important. A fruit is different than a tree. The seed of the fruit could later become a tree, but it's a different kind of thing. So although the fruit is coming from within the tree, although creation is coming somehow from God's own being in a certain way, because there's nothing pre-existing, it's not God. Creation is not God. The same way that the fruit is not a tree, or similar to the fruit not being the tree. Whereas reproduction, no, it's that you're making the same kind of being you are. That's not God in creation. Creation is not the child of God. You and I are, but for a different reason. You guys see the distinction? So that's the second point. Third, there's another thing that we can make that is a little bit different than this. And this is a little bit kind of distant than the stuff that we're used to, but if you think about it, I think there's accuracy to it. When I am, let's say I were to punch Wisama, okay? This poor guy right here, standing here, minding his own business, and I go, so that punch is an act of mine. That activity, that action, is something that I make. I create the punch, okay, loosely speaking. That's also different than bringing forth. Because when you bring forth, you can separate what you brought forth from yourself, whereas you can't have the punch without somebody punching. You guys see that? So all of these ways, this is to say that this verb is actually kind of insightful. Creation is not like Father Andy and his punch, because creation is something distinct from God, whereas the punch is really just something that I'm doing and nothing more. It's something that is also not like having a child, because a child is the same species as the father. Creation is not the same thing as God. See that? And a fruit coming out of a tree comes from within the tree, not from external pieces that are kind of pieced together. You guys see that? I thought that was an interesting kind of insight, and I think that it's helpful to think about creation in those terms. Questions so far?
Why the fruit? I mean, you're speaking of the fruit. Why did God choose the apple as a fruit, not to,
I love that question. That
Why
question
not the plum? Why
that
not
makes
the
me
pears?
so happy.
Oh, nice.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's like the first awesome question you've asked. I'm joking.
First, really? Let me
No,
go
no,
back
no.
and rewind.
Once in a while, yeah, we do. I love that question, and I actually don't want to answer it yet.
Okay.
You know why? Because we're going to talk about it next week. Or no, 2 weeks from now.
But
So
now you're gonna
he's-
make me think
yeah.
about it the whole time.
What is it? Yeah,
Now
think
it's
of-
gonna be in my mind
even
the
better.
whole time.
You know why? Because now you're going to be thinking about the Bible all the time.
So I might be able to.
Oh, you know what? Somebody asked me that question 10 years ago in the Bible study that I used to do in the hall.
Okay.
And I made that guy wait about a year.
Wow.
Yeah. I still see it once in a while, and he still
I'll
remembers
just
that.
Google it.
Yeah, good. No, you're never going to find the answer on Google.
Really?
Never. There's so many wrong answers out there. Yeah, I'm going to hold on to that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me put it this way. It never says apple anywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
That's part of the answer. I'm not going to say
What
more.
does the Bible talk about it then?
It doesn't.
Garden of Eden?
It never says Bible. It never says apple in the Bible. In fact, the word apple is never mentioned in the first 5 books of the New Testament.
What fruit do they choose?
I'm not going to tell you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what I'm
if
gonna
you
wait.
don't know the answer,
You
then
can-
we'll just
Oh, I know
leave
it.
that as
I know, but
as
it's
an apple.
worth waiting for. Let's put it that way. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Let's go back to setting apart. So he and God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all his work which he had done in creation. So now we have these two words that are really interesting. He blessed and he hallowed the seventh day of the week. Okay? So he blessed and hallowed. There's other things that God blesses. Chapter 1, verse 22. Chapter 1, verse 22, it says, God blessed the birds, and he says, be fruitful and multiply. So he blesses the birds and the animals to be fruitful and multiply. And then in verse 28, he blessed male and female. It says he blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply and have dominion. So blessed has these, so far, 3 different sort of applications. One, it has to do with multiply. 2, it has to do with dominion. So be in charge of. And then now we have a third one. The third one has to do with being hallowed, and I'm going to talk about what that means. So this is what blessing means, these three things. So, this is something above and beyond. So, are we blessed in the sense that God is blessing us when He gives us children and gives us good works and fruits? Yeah, that's one type of blessing. Is it another type of blessing to have dominion in the sense of responsibility over something? Yes, that's another kind of blessing. So when somebody, I like to think about this. When you're given a responsibility in life, don't think of it as a burden, think of it as a blessing. Think of it as an opportunity to do good. Because that's literally the language of the Bible. Responsibility is under the category of a blessing. Okay. By the way, this is the same thing, because when you have a child, it doesn't mean you get some cute thing that you get to dress like you. And wheel around in a nice, like, it's not a like an ornament or whatever, like a accessory. Your baby's not an accessory to make you look cute for pictures on Instagram. It's a responsibility. Having a child is a responsibility. Ask the one guy who's an actual parent here. Okay? So these two really do go together. Now here, there's also going to be a responsibility that goes with being hallowed, but I want to talk about what this word means here. Because in context, if you look at just sort of the language, the linguistics of it, the word hallow or sanctify has a very, very precise meaning that we never think about. Who knows what that word means, what the word hallow means? When we say, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Holy.
So holy, to be made holy. But what does that mean?
Glorified?
Okay, glorified. What does glorified mean? That's a slightly different word, but it's related. I'll give you that. What does it mean to make something holy?
Approved?
Approved? Sure.
No, just because from earlier when you said like God bless.
Yeah.
Like, blessing isn't like I could actually like, Father, can I get your blessing for this? Like,
Yeah,
it's almost
permission.
like I'm asking your
Yeah,
approval
yeah,
for
sure.
this, you
Okay.
know? So
Right. That's right.
isn't it kind of like God approved
Yeah.
His work?
But that's all of these. But here, this is giving us something very specific. You know what this word means? It's a very simple, very precise meaning. The word to hallow means you're taking something and you're putting it aside. That's it. That's all it means. Which is weird, right? But it's very simple. It's very sort of meaningful. It means you're setting it apart. When you set apart the Sabbath, you're saying this day is different than all the other days. In fact, it's applied in other ways too, because the day of Passover, one of the prayers that the Jews pray has a member of the family. Gosh, I guess it's the oldest son is supposed to say this in the Passover ritual. The ritual includes one of the kids asking, how is this day different than any other day? So what it is that something is holy means that it's different than everything else. Okay? And I want to kind of pause and talk about that for a second. So what it means to make something holy, so make the Sabbath day holy, is at the very least, it's a different kind of day than every other day. So now later on, way later, books and books later, which we'll never get to in this Bible study, in the book of Exodus, there's some sort of specific stuff that we're supposed to do and not do on the Sabbath, right? You're not supposed to do, regular work on the Sabbath. You're not supposed, and cooking should sort of be made to a minimum, and then you can get really strict with it. And by the time of Jesus, they were really weird, and they were telling Jesus that his disciples shouldn't have even picked wheat off of the thing, and they just kind of went like this and ate they said, no, they're working on Sabbath, so they got really weird about it. At the beginning, it just means, look, make it a day that's special. And what does it mean to make something special? It means, I'm going to do stuff today that I never get to do. But it doesn't mean you get to go to Six Flags. I mean, you can go to Six Flags on Sunday, that's fine. But it means in a way that is holy. You're going to pray in a way that you don't pray every other day. Okay? You're going to be united to God in a way that you're not united to him in any other day. You're going to make it a time that's special in the sense that every single day I do something, we're supposed to pray every day. But if you're working the same way on Sunday and doing the same stuff that you do on Sunday that you do every other day, it's not special at all. Which means you're not hallowing it. You're not setting it apart. It's something similar to, I don't know, you go into It'd be like having an apple stand. You made me think of apples. An apple stand in the on the altar. Like you just go up, you walk up right, and then on top of the altar you have a box of apples that you're selling for 50 cents. That's weird, right? What? And why is it weird? Because the altar's a special thing. You don't just do whatever you want with the altar. You know what I mean? So it's not that, is it a sin to eat apples, or is it a sin to say, no, it's not about sin or not. There's nothing about sin anywhere here. It's just you don't do normal stuff there. That is not a normal, regular place. And that's what the Sabbath is. The Sabbath is not just a normal, regular, everyday. Now, do you guys feel this, or is it kind of lost? I feel like we're sort of losing this as a culture. That the Sabbath day, the day of rest, which for reasons we'll discuss later, moved from Saturday to Sunday as to Jesus' resurrection. But do you guys feel that? Okay, Sunday's a special day. Do you guys sort of have that sense? As you grow older, you kind of lose that, unfortunately. You kind of becomes kind of just a regular, and okay, now I'm going to go to church just because it's something to do, and then just like I have to go to work any other day. Especially if you go to church every single day like I do, it becomes a little bit harder to sort of feel the specialness of it. I got to tell you guys something. I think when you get older, you actually, even the other days start to stop being special. You know Christmas, you know how you sort of feel Christmassy? That goes away. It sucks. At least it did for me. Maybe because we have like 1,000 masses here on Christmas and it gets old. But like I've gone through 40 Christmases, you know? And it's a really lame thing about human beings that when we repeat something, it becomes less special to us. It's just this dumb thing that our brains do to us. I don't know what to do about it. But here God is saying, so now remember this. So look at verse 3 here. He hallowed it because on it God rested from all his work which he had done in creation. If you go way later to Exodus, something really interesting is said there. That third commandment. What's the third commandment? Who can remember? Yeah, word for word. What is it? Remember what?
Your Sabbath?
Yeah. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. This is really interesting. What's the first word? Remember. Which means that commandment was already around. It wasn't a new thing that came down on the tablets. That means remembering the Sabbath, having a day that's special, that is different from every other day. We're going to talk about rest in a sec. The next thing I'm going to talk about is resting. But having that special day is not something that's just commanded to Jews. It is something that belongs to every human being. To have something in their life sometime that's special and different than everything else. Okay. Otherwise, you know what happens if you don't do that? Everything becomes gray. And when everything is gray, everything becomes ugly, and because everything is the same. It's like it becomes like that board. And if every single day is the same, it's like a whiteboard, which means there's nothing interesting about it. And so God is building into creation itself this idea that some things have to be different and separated and other, and if it's not like that, then everything is going to lose its holiness. So now how do we apply that in our lives? I'm being very abstract here. How are you going to do this? I suggest doing this as much as possible in your life. And do it every day. For sure do it someday. Make it be a special day. That there's just some things I'm not going to do. Even if I really have to go to work because my boss is a jerk and he just refuses to give me the day off, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I go to Mass. And I'm going to do everything I can to get to the point where I can take that day off. And I'm going to do things, you know, with my prayer life or with my family that are special for that day. Because it's a holy day. Great, do that on Sunday. But every day you should be doing that. This will change your life if you do this. It will literally change your life. When you get home, at the end of your day at work or school, turn your damn phone off for 1 hour. If you can't handle it for an hour, do it for half an hour. Do it for 10 minutes. Off. And I don't mean turn it off so that you can go on Twitter on your computer. Like just avoid screens for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you can. And just do something other than that for 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever. And make that be your holy time. And pray during it, by all means. But even if you're not praying, even if you're like going to read your book or something like that, don't have your phone next to you, don't have a screen here. Let it be a special time. Let it be a holy time for you. And if you do that every day, a month from now, you're going to be a different person. Believe me. Okay. I also suggest, and I think Chaldeans are usually pretty good at doing this, have a part of your room or your house that's holy. You know? We have our little like holy pictures and stuff like that. I know some people that are a little bit on the crazy side. I know a lot of crazy people actually. But I know some people that like, you know, they got some money. They're not like, you know, in my house we couldn't have done this when I was growing up, but I know some people that have some money. They have a whole extra room. And I know this lady, her room is just like wall to wall, statues and icons. Okay, that's a little bit much. You don't have to have a whole room. But if you have in the corner of your bedroom, a little, you know, a spot where you just have like a nice picture that your grandma gave you for your first communion and a little candle there that you light once in a while when you pray. And just let it be a holy spot. And then you just say that's a difference. There's something different about that place. It's special, and I'm just going to keep it that way. You know what that's going to do psychologically? It's going to make you do that in your own mind and in your own heart. And you're going to create in your own mind a little spot that only belongs to God. And there has to be one. Because we live in our bodies, and if we don't express things in our bodies, we lose it. So if you have a little spot in your room that's dedicated, just special, just to God, it's going to sort of allow you to do it in your own mind and heart too. And if you have a time in your day where you get to do that, this is a special time just for God, it's going to help you do that in your own heart and mind too. Okay, you guys see that? Okay, good. Let's talk about rest. And then we're going to talk some more about, well, let's see if we have time. Yeah, maybe. Let's talk about rest. This is a hard thing to talk about today, actually. Because your boss, who works for somebody who's not self-employed? Most of you, right? Who is self-employed? Some of you? A couple of you? Everybody else is employed by somebody else? Okay. So your boss is not going to like what I'm about to tell you. God created you mostly and mainly to rest, not to work. Mostly, I don't mean in time. I don't mean most of your time should be resting. It should be, but that's not what I'm basing on this passage. I mean the meaning of your life, the reason you were created was not to work. It was to rest. And what rest means is you sit with God and you exist with Him. Okay? And the value of your life is not determined by what you can produce. Why is it? Because, and how do I know? What am I basing that on? Because the Sabbath day is the holy one. All the other days where you work, those are not the holy ones. The holy one is where you don't work. The special time, the important time, is when you're resting. You know, there's a lot to say about this, but I'm going to say a couple of sort of simple things. One, that means what you do with your spare time is the most important thing that you do. And there's nothing that defines you as a person more than the choices you make with your free time. So when I go home today and I waste an hour reading Twitter and what funny things people are saying about the New Hampshire primaries, that choice is much more important in defining who I am than all the stuff that I don't get to decide. Like I said Mass this morning, and all the stuff that I had to do that was imposed on me by my boss, that didn't define me. What defines me are my choices. And what are my choices? Well, one of the big ones is what I do with my spare time. And when I waste my spare time, I'm kind of wasting myself. Now, what am I telling you now? I'm saying when you go home, I don't mean work more at all. At all. When you get home from work, you make the decision to not work and you do something fun, for real, and something that's good, for real. And that, now, I'm going to go home and I'm telling you right now, I'm going to go home and I'm going to waste about half an hour on Twitter. I'm not saying it's a sin there. I'm not talking about sin now. I'm saying, I hope, for my sake, and maybe you can pray for me for this, after that half an hour, I get up and I actually do something that's truly humanly fun. Like I go and I talk to a friend. I live with seminarians. They're not the worst guys in the world. I'll go talk to them. You know, they're pretty close to the worst guys in the world, but they're, you know. So I'll go and talk to them. Maybe I'll go and like I'll play some music on some musical instrument. I'll do something sort of human and just refreshing. That is not work, but it's also not a complete just sitting in front of a screen and drooling. You know what I mean? Do you guys see that important difference? And what I'm telling you right now is that stuff, that recreation time, is the most important time of your day. It's not the stuff you do at work. It's that hour you get at home or that 2 hours at home. Think about the word. Recreation. The word itself is recreation. You are creating yourself again. Because if you don't do that, your blood is gonna get drained and there's gonna be nothing left of you. When you don't do this, there will be nothing left of you. I just saw a report. Big company did this, maybe Microsoft. Last week I saw this report that they done. Some big, I don't know if it was Microsoft, but some big company that I recognized at the time and I forgot now, switched to a 4-day work week, and their production went up 40% with one less day of work. What does that show you? It shows you that human beings, when they rest, there's more to them. There's more of them there. And when you work them to the bone, all you're going to have left is a bunch of skeletons. So those of you who are bosses, remember that when you have employees. Because you know how you feel when your boss works you to the bone. You know that you feel like, I'm going to use a Lord of the Rings analogy, you feel like butter scraped over too much bread. There's nothing left of you by the end of the day. It's a bad boss that does that, who doesn't even understand human beings, and in the end, it's going to be a bad business. Okay. However, God forbid you hurt prophets in a world like ours, and there's millions of people that would be totally fine with draining all your blood for an extra couple of bucks. And I'm telling you right now, those people are your enemies. And if I sound like I'm anti-capitalist right now, sorry, I guess, but sometimes capitalism can harm human nature. Okay. It's not this holy economic system that came down from above. Okay. Everything was built for, all laws and all economic systems are meant for us. And if they hurt human beings, then they need to be adjusted. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So, yeah.
How is that possible? You said that God created you to rest.
Yeah.
But we have bills to pay, we have insurance
Yeah.
to pay, we have
How
taxes to pay.
many Sabbath days
If
are
we-
there?
if
How
we
many
don't-
Sabbath days are there?
Oh, on the 7th day is one.
Out of how many?
Out of 6.
Yeah, out of 7.
Well,
So 1/7.
oh, so
Yeah, pay your bills, dude. I'm not saying.
yeah.
Did
Well,
anybody get
that's
the
what
impression that I'm saying it's a sin to work?
No.
I'm just saying
No.
that you said God created us to rest. So are you applying only
Okay.
the 7th day?
Yes, I'm applying it to 1/7.
Okay.
The rest of the time, whatever it is, the rest of the time, I'll tell you this. This is the way to think about it. This is the meaning of that question that's important is this. Don't rest so that you can go back to work. Work so that you can rest. You guys see that's an important difference? Because sometimes we go on vacation so that, oh, I can't wait to, our boss will give us vacation so that we can rest so that we can go back to work. Okay, forget about your boss now. You work so that you can rest, so that you can be with your family, so you can have that time. Because if you use your family time to just re-energize so you can go back to work, you become a robot.
Nice.
And you become a bad father and mother and husband and wife too. Because that means you're using them so that you can be a better employee. And that's completely ass backwards. You should work for the sake of your family and for the sake of yourself. And your rest. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think that was your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, good. Other comments or questions? Do I sound like a Marxist now? I'm not a Marxist. You don't need to be a Marxist to say these things. Like haramat, that's the way we perceive things. It should be much richer than that. But people care too much about money. What are you gonna do? Okay. Sabbath, holy, rest. Is there anything else I want to say about rest? I guess that's it about the rest thing. Hallowed, set apart, different. Yeah, okay. Let's see what I want to say next. Okay, good. I have actually just enough time to do this. I have about 5 minutes left of the Bible study time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about this transition. Look at the next verse. It says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. Period. In the day when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, when no plant of the field was yet. This is a new chapter, and scholars more or less agree that this was probably written by a different author. Okay. So there are two different creation accounts. There's the one that is chapter 1 and those first couple of verses of chapter 2, and then the new one starts in verse 4. Okay, so let's just compare the beginnings of these. Verse 1 of chapter 1 says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." That's the title. The title of this one is, "These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created." Slightly different title, probably different authors. One of the things that suggests different authors is this. Although it is debated, it's not this like undeniable fact. But one of the arguments that there's two different authors is this, that all throughout chapter 1, you have a certain name for God, which is this. Remember I had these on the board last week, or 2 weeks ago? This is the name that you have for God for most of chapter 1. Suddenly in chapter 2, you get this name. Yahweh Elohim. So this new name, that's, if you look on chapter 2, verse 4, the Lord God. You see how Lord is in small caps, they call that? That font where it's all capital letters? That is representing this name here. So, let's say, I'm used to saying, oh, I'm friends with this guy and his name is Mr. Brichu. Okay? Mr. Brichu. I'm friends with that guy, Mr. Brichu. And I tell you this long story about Mr. Mamu, sorry, his wife is Brichu. And this good friend of mine, Mr. Brichu. And I keep saying Mr. Mamu, Mr. Mamu, Mr. Mamu.
Yes.
And then, suddenly, it changes and I start saying David, David, David.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. You're gonna have something.
How do you know?
Special guest today, David Mamu. So we have nicknames for each other. You can.
Thank you.
We have nicknames. So some people are used to calling this guy Mr. Zori, like his employees, right? And his underlings. Some people call him Wisama. Some people call him Wes. Some people call him Osama. And he knows who calls him what. And if I were to call him Osama, I never call him that, he's going to think there's something weird. So here suddenly the name for God changes dramatically. So it suggests that maybe there's a different set of authors working here. Okay, they call this, I guess, the Yahwist source. I don't know. But it's a totally different presentation. This is where we get the Garden of Eden. This is where we get the story of Adam and the rib being taken out of his side and Eve being created. None of that's in chapter 1. Now, the wrong way to think about this is that these are contradictory stories and then the whole Bible is dumb and we should throw it away. No, dude. You can tell, especially when we understand this in a kind of more symbolic way, I can say a million different stories. In fact, here's the best example of this, is the Gospels. Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like, and then there's like maybe 50 different things that the kingdom of heaven is like. Right? Kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Kingdom of heaven is like a man who built his house, whatever, like he sowed seed in his field. Wait, so is the kingdom of heaven like a seed, a mustard seed, or is it like a man who's planting seeds? Is the gospel contradicting itself? Is Jesus crazy and we need to stop it? No. You can compare things, you can tell a story that explains two different aspects of something. You know what I mean? So the story of, I don't know, the story of Father Andy. There's a lot to say about me just analyzing the chemical elements of my body, you know? You have somebody could speak for hours about all the different things that my body is made up of, right? Water, whatever percent water, like 80% water, 70% water, some carbon, a bunch of beef jerky, I don't know, that cookie that I was eating earlier. That's what's making, you can say that and then suddenly you're going to say, and Father Andy is a priest. That's a totally different way to describe somebody. He teaches philosophy and he's a Chaldean. Wait, is he a priest or is he a Chaldean? How can he be both? Well, you can be both. There's many different ways to describe somebody. So the second creation account is not saying something different as in contradictory. It's just approaching the world from a different angle. And one of the things, and this is what we're going to discover as we get into it, but I'm going to give you this up front. The first story is, I think we can describe it as cosmological. Big picture about the cosmos, and then within the picture, within the sort of big framework of the cosmos, the human being within it. That's the first chapter, with the 6 days and the sun and all this stuff. The second creation account, which, by the way, probably is older, according to the scholars that think it's written differently, is, we can call it social or political. So it's like describing Father Andy in his location on planet Earth, which is a certain distance from the sun, which is a certain distance from the center of the Milky Way, which is whatever. That's one thing to describe Father Andy. It's another thing to describe Father Andy as he's friends with that guy David and this guy Wes and some of you guys over here. So when you describe in relationship to other people, it's a different story than the relationship you have to the universe. So the first chapter is about our relationship to the universe. The second story is about our relationship to each other. Specifically, and then now this is where the book of Genesis just flowers, becomes amazing. Because our relationships to other people are unbelievably complex and messy. And have different sort of angles within themselves. And the first story that we're going to hear is about the relationship between man and woman, which is a huge disaster. It's just the biggest disaster in the world. We're going to see why. The story of Adam and Eve and how that whole thing blows up. And then the second relationship is between two brothers. And that turns out to be a disaster too. And then before long, just a few chapters in, we have the first cities, and that becomes a disaster. And the rest of the Old Testament is essentially what screw-ups human beings are. And I love that because it shows how much we need God to save us. And really the whole story of the Old Testament is just us, God trying to save us, and us being dumb about it and like messing things up. So that begins in the next chapter with the story of Adam and Eve. Okay, good?
In the story of Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
you mentioned that he took the rib out of Adam
Yep.
and created Eve.
Yep.
Is there a particular reason why he just chose the rib instead of
Yes.
the brain?
And in fact, the ancient rabbis had a very interesting story about that.
Okay.
And I guess I'll answer that. I was mean to you before, so I'll tell you this one.
Yeah, right, you've been mean everything.
This is what the rabbis say. The rabbis say that Eve was taken from the side of Adam,
Right,
not from his foot,
okay.
because that would have made her underneath him, and not from his head, because that would have made her above him. But she was taken from his side so that she would be his equal. That's the idea.
But does that mean that a man is more intelligent than a woman because he only created her out of a rib?
No, because I don't think with my ribs, do you?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
No.
He created Eve out of the rib.
No, if anything, she's better, because Adam was made out of dirt.
Oh. Nice.
Yeah. Yep. But the reason you're asking about the ribs specifically rather than some other part of the body
Okay.
is because it's in the middle. It's
Right.
so she's his equal. That's the idea.
Or did he create her to create marriage?
We'll talk about marriage later, but yeah. But that's one of the big disasters.
And he's, oh, that was a disaster, so you're.
Well, marriage, there's no bigger
Are you
disaster in the
saying
world than
that
marriage.
you shouldn't get married as a guy, or
I mean, you might as well.
why?
Because
Don't
being
you
single
perform
sucks too.
marriages?
No, and being single is terrible too. Everything. Here's the thing. The story of Genesis is about how life on this earth sucks
Wow,
and what we can do about it, and how God is the only way to save us. Is our only salvation. Because if we can do it ourselves and we can make it okay, what do you need God for? This is my problem with the Marxists, by the way, that came up earlier. The reason I'm not a Marxist, among many reasons actually, is because they think they can make this earth perfect.
why not?
It's not going to work.
That's what they call the intelligent beings. We're the intelligent
Yeah.
beings, so we can create.
This
we
is
can-
perfect. This is exactly the right question.
Okay,
Genesis is about how we're not that intelligent.
wow.
Yeah.
So I go to school, get training.
Beats me, man.
We have a brain.
Beats me.
Wow.
Let me put it. Let me give you a annoying answer to a question.
Okay,
We're smart to a certain degree,
right.
but not enough to make our lives perfect.
Why do they say higher intelligent beings?
Higher, but not highest.
Okay.
Okay, open questions, open Q&A. What did you guys think about this week that was weird? What did you notice about with it, or on Sunday, or somebody asked you some weird question at work or at school or whatever? David says he.
Your homily on Sunday sounded kind of angry.
Yeah, that was a very angry homily.
I was just curious, is it an angry homily?
No, Father Danny told me to preach that mass, and then I was really busy and I didn't have time to prepare until about half an hour before. And then I caught that point, and I said, you know what? I really want to talk about this because it's worth. So, David is asking about my homily at the 4 o'clock mass on Sunday. I was kind of like, who is there? I wasn't trying to sound mean, but like, guys, like I can't solve all your problems, man. Seriously, I'm not God. And like, it's kind of like irresponsible of you guys to just make me make all your decisions. And then, you know what? One time in my life, I just knew two people that I just happened to be friends with, and they had just both gone through breakup. This is years ago. You probably don't know these people. They had just gone through this breakup, and I'm like, okay, what the hell, why not? And I tried to like, you know, and then they dated a couple times, and it didn't work out, and then they both were mad at me. And I said, on my life, I will never do that again. And priests are bad at it anyway. Let your grandma or one of the nuns do it. They're much better than we are. Okay? Of arranging marriages. Okay?
Are you speaking on you?
Never in my life will I do that. Don't come to me and ask about, hey, what's she like? I don't care what she's like. Go talk to her yourself. So it's sort of coming from that place that like Chaldeans especially get like superstitious that like if it's a priest that gives them advice, it's like this infallible thing. It's not infallible. We're guessing just like you are, man. Honestly. Figure out your own stuff. We give advice. I'll help you analyze a Bible text, and I'll teach you Aristotle if you ever want to do that. But like, what do I know about which business you should buy or which job you should take? What the hell do I know? You know? People ask me that all the time, and it's annoying. And when I say, what the hell do I know, they get mad at me. Like it's my job to know everything. Come on, man. I can name names. There's people that come to this Bible study that have done that.
Do you answer that question to them when they ask you?
I say that, yeah, I say exactly that.
Really?
I say, what the hell do I know?
Well, just tell them as a suggestion or something.
I'll say like, okay, here's what I do. Here's what I do as a friend, not even in my priestly ministry. As a friend, I'll be like, what are the pros and cons? This one is further driving. This one is a little bit extra money. I don't know. What? And I'll say, okay, this is my only point is this. When I get to that, I'm like, okay, this one will make you a little bit more money, but this one will give you more time with your family.
Right.
I think family's better. I would do this one if I were you. That's it. Is it a sin to do that one? No, but this one seems better to me. That's all I'm going to do. You know what I mean? But should you get solar panels on the top of your house? I don't know. Should you move to El Cajon or Rancho? Oh, who cares? What color car should you get? Is it a sin if you get it? Something, man. Oh, there's mine. Thanks for the email. My insurance guy. Okay. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
Can we not make fruit like trees in the sense that we can make ideas? Because it's something we take in information and then produce something that
Sure. That sounds right.
Isn't ourself, but is like ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's right. By the way, this is not something that only God can do. This one, God and trees, and sure, we can do that too. It just doesn't, it's just, we're not one of the things that's named in chapter 1 as doing this. But sure, yeah, we can, ideas, maybe there's other things we can do like that. I mean, vomit comes from within us, and it's not us. What else? Other things, similar things. Ideas is a good one. Ideas barely exist though. They're just kind of like these, you know what I mean? They don't really have a kind of actual entity existence. But yeah, sure, I'll give you that. What other question you guys have? Anything funny on TV? Father Danny's over there. Hey, good luck, man.
I saw your version of the preaching, a little short, brief clip. Can you explain what you were trying to say and summarize it in short, brief?
Which one?
I think one that was talking about the what was it? Yeah,
Ba'utha. Oh, and I preached on Ba'utha. I did preach on Ba'utha, didn't I?
yeah.
Tuesday. Who remembers what I was talking about?
I didn't know what you were saying, so I thought maybe you could give us.
I don't think it was very good.
I wasn't understanding which one you're talking about.
But maybe that's why. Maybe it was because it wasn't good.
Maybe you can help summarize it a little.
I'm trying to remember what I preached on. What was the gospel? Does anyone remember? It was over a week ago. It's like a different world now.
I mean, I wrote something, but I didn't remember what I wrote.
Yeah.
It was unclear.
Yeah.
Like you were just.
It was probably
you
really
just
bad.
wanted to- You just wanted to lecture and then get out. It was like, what?
No, I remember putting thought into it, but I forgot what I was saying.
it was.
I have a bad memory is my problem. I really don't remember things well.
Well, smart people do.
I don't. I'm not smart.
There's so much to remember, so they forget some of the stuff.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah.
That means I'm smart.
Yeah. That's why I come to your class. Hey?
Thanks, man. Who remembers? Somebody?
I think it was about the judge and the old woman.
Oh, the widow. Yeah. No, that was good. That was good. Yeah. I thought it was pretty good.
Oh, man.
Do I have time for that? I don't know.
What you got time?
I have time for that. You want to hear about this widow lady? She's kind of funny. This is a parable that Jesus says. It's like there's this judge. It says he doesn't fear God and he doesn't care about people, right? So he doesn't fear God or care about people. And then there's this widow who is buhdelta, as we say. She doesn't have any. So there's some issue that she needs help with, and he doesn't care about her. He doesn't care about what's right. So he just keeps ignoring her. And then she keeps coming to him all the time just to annoy him until she gets what she wants. And then finally he says to himself, like, even though I don't respect God and I don't care about people, I'm just going to give her what she wants to shut her up. In the end. So I think there's funny characters here. So the widow is really funny. She doesn't give up at all. She keeps trying, which God bless her for that. Because we get discouraged sometimes, you know? You ever do like squats, and then the next day your legs hurt, and you're like, I'm never going to do squats again? Then you need to learn from this widow. You got to keep trying, even though it hurts. Okay?
But we run out of money, what are we gonna do?
No, squats are free, man.
Oh, yeah.
Squats.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the lady. She keeps trying, but attorney fees can.
Attorney fees. Yeah, lawyers are expensive. I'm sorry if you're a lawyer. He's right about that. So one of the lessons is you got to keep trying. But my point in the homily was that I don't think the judge represents God, because Jesus says that.
Okay.
Jesus says God is not like this judge.
Right.
So the interpretation that I was trying to give was that we're actually the judge, because we're the ones, when we insist on our own way, we're the ones that don't respect God, and we're the ones that don't care about other people. And I think God is like the widow who keeps coming to us. You know, in Revelation it says, I'm knocking on the door. So God is the one that always is knocking on the door of our hearts to ask us to repent. And he's the one that never gives up on us. And even if we're stubborn, and then God is hoping that we'll just give him what he wants just to make him happy, because he's going to follow us and try to get us to do what's right to the point where it's annoying. And I like that. I think that's a good interpretation, personally. So that was my.
So if we annoy the judge, we're gonna be held in contempt of court. We're gonna
Yeah.
be in jail for that.
So that's why I say I think we're the judge, and
Okay.
God is the one that's knocking on our door, that's bothering us until we give him what he wants.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I think when you reverse it, all these weird, funny things that like, wait, we're not supposed to do that. It all makes sense when you reverse it.
Okay.
I think. I might be totally wrong about that, but whatever. I've been wrong before.
Thank you.
How about another question? One more. One or two more. I'm gonna eat a cookie while you guys think.
I still wanna know what the apple is.
I know, me too. It's good, right? Sugar free.
Better than Red Bull.
Better with Red Bull. Yeah.
So I started doing the rosary, like daily.
Good.
Yeah.
Months ago. And, my brother goes to Shadow Mountain, and so he it's a Baptist church, so all they do is just read the Bible, and all they do is just focus on the Lord. And so, I guess I'm not strong, like, in my argument, and he says, why do you have to go through Mary to ask God?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
And,
Sure.
my only argument was like, Mary is the closest person to God, and so he listens to her as opposed to
Okay.
me, and that kind of thing.
So that's a good question. So the short answer is you don't. It's not about have to.
Right.
And in our relationship to God, it's not about what's the bare minimum and what you absolutely have to do. So that's the first answer, because it's a kind of loaded question when you ask it that way. You know, like, why do you have to? No, when did anybody say you have to? Rosary is the most optional prayer in the world. What you have to do is go to mass. What you have to do is pray every day in whatever form you like. Why may you? It's the same as asking anybody else to pray for you. You know, except your answer is part of this, which is, and she has a special place. Obviously, she has a special place in the life of salvation, as we know from the Bible. So if I can ask somebody else to pray for me, why not? So the question is, why wouldn't you? Now, should it be every single time? No, that's probably not the best idea, because at Mass you're praying to the Father through Christ and so on, and asking the Holy. So it's never a matter of limitation or necessity. It's not about do you have to or do you have to only do this. Catholicism is about think of this garden image and next week that we're going to talk about. So we're going to start talking about the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is the earliest temple. And the idea is This is the earliest temple where God is worshipped, and Adam is the priest of that temple. I'm going to start explaining that next week. This is the way the church is. The church is like a garden. And in a garden, you don't only have one kind of flower or only one kind of tree. You have everything. And everything is sort of in the right place. And the more you have of everything, the more beautiful it becomes. And in the garden, they had thousands of trees they could eat from, that they were allowed to eat from. So it's not just, why do you have to eat apples? What do you mean there's apples, eat an apple. Why wouldn't you? You know? So that's the way to think about it, more in terms of breadth and like wideness, and there's variety and there's beauty and there's, does that make sense? That's the way that I would respond.
And that would be the same response for like, as, like I fast on Tuesdays for St. Anthony.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Same thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah, nobody has to do that.
right.
Yeah. So all these things called devotions, the Rosary, the Angelus, fasting this day, Wednesdays for this, St. Anthony this, St. that. This is variety. You know why? Because there's 1 billion Catholics in the world, and not all of them are going to like the same prayers. So pick one you like and pray it. You know what I mean? The only thing that's for everybody is the one that Jesus said is for everybody, which is the Mass. When he said, do this in memory of me, and that's for everybody. And like it or not, I don't care if you don't like Mass, you still have to go. Whereas if somebody doesn't like the Rosary, I'm going to say, okay, well, find something you like. And if somebody does like the Rosary, I'm going to say, awesome. And I pray the Rosary when I'm driving. It's a perfect thing to do when you're driving. Better than listening to Eminem or something. That's a different form of prayer, I guess. I don't know. For this guy. Yeah.
So when you're driving, how are you able to meditate on the Rosary? That's something that's
Because I zone out anyway.
Then you also have to count,
What is it?
then you also have to count the amount of like, Hail Marys that you do.
Yeah, I have 10 fingers. Luckily.
No,
No, I actually, no, I mean, I don't like to hold the beads because I used to drive a stick shift. This is a true story. I used to drive a stick and I would shift and the rosary would get caught while I was praying it. And then it would like pull it and like one time it broke and it was dangerous. So I just use my fingers after that.
Is it okay to use your fingers? Nothing wrong with it, right?
Yeah, it's fine. No, you're asking about meditation. What's your name?
Paul.
Paul, you're asking about meditation. Also remember, devotional prayers are intended to be casual. It's not this like intense meditation where, no, it's like the whole point of it is that it's easy. That you can do it and, you're praying the Hail Mary and at the same time you're thinking about the agony in the garden and at the same time you've got something. The whole point of it is that you can your mind can kind of be relaxed while you're doing it. Whereas maybe other types of prayer would be more sort of like focused, like meditation on scripture, for example. Or at Mass, you should really try to pay attention to the words of the prayers. Those are more sort of intense focused. But the point of devotions is that they're more kind of casual. Yeah. So which is why I can do it when I drive. Yeah. If you're driving stick shift, I don't remember. Yeah. There's a little there's the rosary rings with the 10. Maybe that would work. Okay.